Do you ever struggle to remember important details or feel like your mind lets you down at the worst moments? What if I told you the secret to mastering your memory lies in ancient wisdom? In this video, we'll explore the science of memory through the teachings of Miyamoto Musashi, the legendary samurai, and discover how to unlock the power to remember anything. Step 1. Use mnemonics. One of the best ways to improve your memory is to use mnemonics. You can make hard or vague material easy to understand, memorable, and interesting by using these methods. When you link information to patterns, pictures, or phrases, it's easier to remember and keep. Mnemonics are great because they can be used in a lot of different ways. You can be as artistic and unique as you want. To remember the order of the Great Lakes, for example, Holmes can help you remember them: Huron, Ontario, Michigan, Erie, and Superior. Also, it's much easier to remember numbers when they are linked to a personal story or turned into a song. Mnemonics use the brain's natural ability to remember things that are vivid, strange, or emotional. Miyamoto Musashi stressed getting to the heart of complicated ideas. In the Book of Five Rings, he wrote about how important it is to get rid of things that aren't necessary and focus on the things that really count. Using this idea to help you remember things, mnemonics are a quick way to break down large amounts of information into pieces that you can easily understand. They're not just for remembering facts. They make you think deeply about how ideas are connected and spark your imagination. A lot of the time, using fun, exaggeration, or absurdity to make mnemonics works well. Think about having to remember the word catapult. Picture a huge cat being thrown through the air by an ancient siege weapon. The picture is more likely to stick if it is funny and over the top. Making mnemonics also helps you be more aware, which was something that Musashi really valued. He thought that intent and attention were very important for mastering any art. When you make your own mnemonics, you're not just remembering, you're using your mind and connecting deeply with the information. Using mnemonics is more than just a way to remember things. It's a way to understand things. In the words of Musashi, they make things easier to understand, spark imagination, and teach you to see beyond what you see. If you use them right, they will help you remember things better than ever. Step 2. Chunk information. Chunking is a powerful way to improve your memory that works with the way our brains naturally process information. Breaking up big sets of information into smaller, easier to remember pieces, or chunks, is what chunking is all about. Our brains are good at putting together linked pieces of information into coherent units. This method helps us remember and find a lot more than we could before. Think about a long string of numbers, like 1492177611942. It's too hard to remember all 12 numbers at once. The sequence is much easier to handle when broken up into smaller, more meaningful chunks, like 1492, 1776, 1942. This is especially true if you connect these numbers to important events in history. This rule is true for all kinds of information, not just numbers. It works for words, ideas, and everything else. Miyamoto Musashi's lessons stress a similar way to get good at handling complexity. Musashi wrote a lot about breaking down strategies and techniques into smaller, easier-to-understand parts, performing each one well, and then putting them all together in a way that makes sense. This orderly breakdown makes sure that even the most complicated systems are better understood and mastered. Chunking helps you remember things best when the knowledge in each chunk is important to you. Putting words together based on topics like food, travel, or feelings can help you learn and remember them when you're learning a new language. Similarly, organizing information into groups or chapters while studying for a test helps your brain find patterns and connections, which are important for remembering things. Chunking also helps your brain work better, a lot like how Musashi fought with discipline. Focusing your attention on smaller pieces of knowledge keeps your mind from getting too busy, which lets it work more clearly and quickly. Your brain will learn to make these chunks on its own over time, which will make it easier for you to remember things and use them in all parts of your life. Chunking is a lot like Musashi's ideas about discipline and careful practice. By breaking down the overwhelming into manageable pieces, you set yourself up to really master your memory and information. Step 3. Visualize with mental imagery. The practice of visualization can help you turn vague ideas into clear, remembered pictures in your mind. Making mental pictures of ideas and facts makes them more real and easier to remember. Visualization is like breathing life into facts. It turns dry, dull information into a lively, interesting story that your brain loves to go back to. Consider that you are trying to remember the nucleus, mitochondria, and cell membrane that make up a cell. To remember, picture the nucleus as the city's control center in the future, the mitochondria as bright power plants, and the cell membrane as a force field that keeps you safe. This mental picture makes the story more interesting and helps you remember the details. The famous ninja Miyamoto Musashi wrote a lot about how important it is to picture what you want to happen. He thought that being able to think clearly and predict the future were important for controlling both the sword and the mind. Musashi would picture not only his own moves, but also those of his opponent before a battle. This helped him guess their strategy and plan how to respond. He said something famous: think little of yourself and much of the world. Asterisk when it comes to memory. This means going beyond a basic understanding and making a stronger mental link with the knowledge you want to remember. First, close your eyes and picture what you need to remember. This is called meditation. As much as possible, make the pictures as real and vivid as you can. If you're trying to remember a list of things, picture them engaging in strange ways, like a loaf of bread riding a skateboard while wearing sunglasses. It's better if it's silly and lively. Repetition is also good for visualizing. Just like a samurai gets better at what he does by practicing, going over your mental pictures again and again makes them clearer and easier to remember. To make a more complete approach, use this method along with other remembering techniques, such as mnemonics or associations. You can use the same discipline and creativity that Musashi admired by learning visualization. This will turn your mind into a well-trained memory machine. Step 4. Teach what you learn. Teaching what you've learned is one of the best ways to make it stick in your mind and remember things better. You have to clear up your ideas, make the information easier to understand, and arrange it in a way that makes sense when you have to explain something to someone else. This process turns passive information into active learning, which makes it much more likely that you will remember it. That's how it works. When you learn something for yourself, you only need to understand it in your own way. But when you teach it to others, you need to be ready for questions, fill in the blanks, and make sure the information sticks in a way that makes sense. This extra work helps you really understand the subject and make sure you've absorbed it completely. This was something that the famous ninja Miyamoto Musashi really got. In his writings, he talked a lot about how to learn something by practicing and teaching others. He put it in writing. The way is in training. Asterisk teaching is a sort of training because it makes you better at what you do, makes you go over the basics again, and keeps you focused on what you've learned. Being a teacher doesn't always mean being in front of a class. You can teach by talking about ideas with a friend, writing an article or blog post, making a video, or even just chatting about them. Putting your thoughts in order and saying them out loud will show you where you might not fully understand something. This feedback process is a great way to make things better. Besides that, teaching boosts confidence. By talking about what you've learned, you confirm your skills, which makes you feel stronger and more confident. This fits with Musashi's idea that you should move quickly. In the same way that samurai must be brave in battle, teaching lets you take brave steps to own your information. Keep in mind that teaching isn't just for other people, it's also a way to help yourself. You learn more when you teach. By teaching others, you respect the cycle of learning and mastery, which is a lot like how the samurai were always dedicated to their craft. Step 5. Spaced repetition. Spaced repetition means going over the same knowledge more and more often over time. This method takes advantage of the brain's tendency to forget things and improves memory by making you remember things just as they start to fade. Think about planting seeds. It might seem like a good idea to water them every day, but too much water can stop their growth. Instead, giving the plants more time between watering lets the roots get deeper. The same is true for memory. Giving yourself time between study sessions helps the information stick. Musashi's works show how important timing and rhythm are. During his fights, he watched how his opponent moved and hit at the right time. This idea is similar to spaced repetition, which teaches us to go over knowledge just the right number of times to make it stick. As part of spaced repetition, you can use notes or apps like Anki. These methods keep track of how much you've learned and tell you when you need to review something based on how well you remember it. This personalized method helps you remember things better by letting you focus on what needs to be reinforced. Spaced repetition also fights the idea of knowledge, which is the false belief that you know something well just because you remember it recently. By going over things again and again over the course of days, weeks, or months, you really start to understand them. Musashi's teachings show us that skill is not something you get all at once, but something you work on and get better at over time. This concept comes to life in spaced repetition, which helps you remember things and get better at what you're doing. Step 6. Engage multiple senses. Using more than one sense helps you remember what you've learned. The brain is set up to process knowledge more deeply when it's seen, heard, touched, or felt in different ways. Like, don't just read the words when you're learning a new language. Read them out loud, write them down, and connect them to pictures. Each sense builds on the ones that come before it, making a web of links in your thoughts. Musashi stressed that he had to be completely absorbed in his exercise. He thought that to reach mastery, one had to use all of their being. He told them, "You must understand that there is more than one path to the top of the mountain," which meant they should be open and flexible in how they learn. Involving more than one sense also keeps your brain active and interested. It's easier to understand and remember things when you listen to a lecture, watch a linked video, and write down your notes. You are in line with Musashi's idea of holistic practice if you use this method to help you learn. If you use all of your senses, your memory will be better and last longer. Step 7. Create associations. Creating connections means connecting new information to things you already know. This method takes advantage of the brain's need for links, which makes it easier to remember things. If you meet someone called Rose, picture them with a bunch of roses in their hands. Making this thought connection with them helps you remember their name later. Associations are useful because they put new knowledge into context, making it easier to understand. Musashi's lessons tell us to look for patterns and connections in everything. He thought that the key to success was to see the links between things that didn't seem to go together. In remembering, this means coming up with new ways to connect new information with things you already know. Focus on vivid, one-of-a-kind links to make associations that work. It's more likely to stick if the link is funny or surprising. This method not only helps you remember things better, but it also makes you more creative by teaching your brain to think of new ways to do things. Musashi taught us to look at the bigger picture and find common ground between different things. By making connections, you respect this wisdom and build a memory that is both broad and deep. Memory is more than just a skill. It's a way to learn, grow, and be successful. You can turn your mind into a powerful tool for mastery by using these tips and following Miyamoto Musashi's lessons. Every step you take, whether it's mnemonics, visualization, or spaced repeat, helps you learn more about how memories work. You can remember anything if you work hard, concentrate, and be creative. This is also the key to reaching your full ability.